Back in 2022, the Biden administration was doing everything it could to distance itself from Donald Trump's foreign policy. Joe Biden and his handlers wanted to demonstrate that 1 year after the election, the adults were supposedly in charge now. And to that end, Biden hosted the president of Colombia at the White House. And the purpose of the meeting was to announce that the U.S. intended to designate Colombia as a quote-unquote major non-NATO ally. Watch.
Today, I'm proud to announce that I intend to designate Colombia a major non-NATO ally, because that's exactly what you are, a major non-NATO ally. And this is a recognition of the unique and close relationship between our countries.
Now, like so many other alliances we've entered into, this was the very definition of a one-sided deal. I mean, more than a quarter of Colombia's imports come from the U.S., while Colombia accounts for a fraction of a percent of U.S. imports. Colombia's Air Force was making news because they were cannibalizing their rotary wing aircraft for spare parts. By most estimates, no other country in the Western Hemisphere has received more U.S. assistance in the last 50 years than Colombia. And Colombia clearly wasn't capable of taking care of its own domestic affairs. In fact, just days ago, northern Colombia erupted into all-out warfare as guerrilla factions launched an invasion to take control of cocaine production. So that's what Colombia is like. So a reasonable person might ask, why exactly was the Biden administration going out of its way to declare that Colombia was a major ally? How exactly are we defining the word major here? Not to mention ally. I mean, isn't an alliance supposed to be mutually beneficial? Where's the benefit for us? What the hell does Colombia bring to the table besides coffee and cocaine? Like, what do they do for us? Joe Biden and his administration never answered those questions. You can read all their press releases and statements, and they never explain it. But these are pretty important questions, especially after what happened this week when Colombia decided to reject U.S. military flights containing dozens of Colombian nationals who had illegally entered the United States. According to the State Department, at first, Colombia signaled that these flights were acceptable, and then when the C-17 cargo planes carrying the Colombian nationals were in the air, Colombia terminated their landing clearance and forced the planes to turn around. And before we get into the specifics of this particular dispute, I just want you to think about that for a second. Imagine you're a Colombian citizen and you're being deported from the United States back to your home country, and then you find out in the middle of the flight that your home country doesn't even want you. I mean, you're such an undesirable criminal, such a strain on society, apparently, that you can't go anywhere. Your own country won't take you back. Even Con Air didn't have that problem. And to make matters worse, the excuse that Colombia's government invoked was clearly a pretext that made no sense whatsoever. Watch.
President Trump says he's directing his administration to take immediate action against Colombia's president and his supporters, including tariffs, a travel ban, and visa sanctions. The move comes after Colombia denied entry to 2 C-17 military planes carrying undocumented immigrants, forcing the planes to turn around midair. Colombian President Gustavo Petro said Sunday that the U.S. cannot treat migrants as criminals and that Colombia would accept migrants on civilian planes. The C-17 is a large Air Force plane that's typically used to transport troops and cargo, like this tank. While the Air Force says it's designed to hold about 100 paratroopers with their gear, it can also carry more than 800 passengers if needed, as seen here during the U.S. evacuation from Afghanistan. On Friday, 2 C-17s with about 80 migrants each arrived in Guatemala City from Texas and Arizona.
So the reasoning, according to Colombia's president, is that it's wrong to treat these Colombian nationals like criminals, even though that's exactly what they are. They broke the law. By definition, that makes you a criminal. But even if you concede that point, even if you pretend for a second that all these Colombian nationals on board the C-17 are law-abiding citizens who have done nothing wrong in their lives, the complaint still doesn't make any sense. There's nothing undignified in any way about what's happening here. As you just heard, there are plenty of non-criminals who ride aboard these C-17s every day, and they don't complain because there's nothing unusual or oppressive about it. The thing can carry 800 passengers in an emergency. It can carry 100 paratroopers in full gear without any problem. And yet we're supposed to believe that it's a human rights catastrophe when 80 illegal aliens, just 80, are forced to fly on one of these planes for a few hours. And that's not the only problem with the reasoning here. Consider this. Even if Colombia's government did succeed in rejecting these flights, all that would happen is that these Colombian citizens would end up in migrant detention facilities in the United States. How exactly is that outcome any more dignified than simply allowing them to go back to their homes? And by the way, we're not under any obligation to give these criminals a free ride back anyway. Okay, we would be well within our rights to just drop them off in the desert on the other side of the border and tell them to figure it out themselves. I mean, you got here, get yourself home. It's not my job to get you home. So these flights represent the United States being, if anything, too kind and generous in the first place. So obviously everything the Colombian government is saying is a lie. Gustavo Petro is trying to deny the return of his own citizens to their own country because he doesn't want them. He's admitting many times over that the Trump administration is doing the right thing by getting rid of these people. If you spend just a few seconds thinking about what the government of Colombia is saying, that becomes very clear. It was also pretty clear that the whole Tough Guy Act was a ruse. You know, nobody takes Gustavo Petro seriously, even in his own country. Last summer, even though he's married and supposedly straight, Petro was spotted holding hands on some kind of date with a trans-identifying man. Here's that footage. And you can see it there. And when this, so that's a man he's holding hands with. You can tell by the shoulders, and you know that's always a dead giveaway. When this footage circulated at the time, Petro didn't deny the rumors, really. Instead, he condemned transphobia and demanded privacy and said that he definitely wasn't gay. You know, which, by the way, when you got to put out a public statement saying, hey, I'm definitely not gay, folks, like that's usually a sign that things are not going exactly well. People who aren't gay don't have to put out public statements saying that they're not. So anyway, he's going on a date with another man in a totally heterosexual kind of way, he insisted. So when it comes to respectable, reliable allies, needless to say, the Biden administration had a keen eye. And obviously, his whole tough guy negotiator routine was extremely fake and transparent. But we all know why Gustavo is trying this approach. Because usually, historically, it works. If Joe Biden or Kamala Harris were still in office, they'd be falling over themselves to apologize for offending our major non-NATO ally. They would be saying, okay, what kind of plane should we put them on? You want to see, we'll get a private jet. We'll get each one of them a private jet. Will that be okay with you? Gustavo, you tell us what to do. We'll do exactly what you say, Gustavo. But that didn't happen this time. Trump was reportedly golfing when Colombia came up with this nonsense, and he immediately responded to it via a post on Truth Social. He wrote that, quote, Petro's denial of these flights has jeopardized the national security and public safety of the United States. So I have directed my administration to immediately take the following urgent and decisive retaliatory measures. And those measures included 25% tariffs on Colombian goods, as well as a travel ban on Colombian government officials, visa sanctions on party members, enhanced inspections of Colombians at the border, additional treasury and banking sanctions. And Trump threatened even more crushing tariffs, up to 50%, if Colombia didn't back down. Now, as expected, there was some outrage on the left in response to this threat, but Trump's approach was both morally correct and strategically smart. The United States holds literally all the cards against a country like Colombia. We have all of the leverage. They have none. We could step on the nation like an ant if we wanted to. They have, again, no leverage. They have no power. We could incinerate the entire country in 10 seconds. Okay, the power imbalance could not be any more cartoonishly extreme than it is, which means that we can easily bully them into submission. We have both the ability and the moral right and obligation to impose our will on these countries until they stop flooding our communities with criminals. Trump should treat every country to our south just like this until they all get in line. And there's nothing they can do about it. Not a single damn thing. Let's talk about something that affects all of us, responsible, hardworking Americans, taxes. Now that it's the new year and tax season is upon us, are you prepared for what's coming? Do you owe back taxes or your tax returns still unfiled? Missed the deadline to file for an extension? With the new year beginning and heading into the busy tax season, the IRS may be ramping up enforcement. Let me tell you, they're not playing around. You could face wage garnishments, frozen bank accounts, even property seizures if you haven't taken action yet. Here's the good news. There's still hope. Tax Network USA has been in this game for years, and they know exactly how to navigate the complex world of tax law. They've helped taxpayers save over $1 billion in tax debt and have filed over 10,000 tax returns. That's billion with a B, folks. They specialize in helping hardworking Americans like you reduce their tax burdens. Look, I get it. Dealing with the IRS is about as fun as a root canal, but ignoring the problem will not make it go away. So here's what you got to do. For a complimentary consultation, call today at 1-800-958-1000 or visit their website at tnusa.com/Walsh. That's 1-800-958-1000 or visit tnusa.com/Walsh today. Don't let the IRS take advantage of you. Get the help you need with Tax Network USA. And very quickly, based on reporting from Fox's Bill Mulligan, Colombia's government came to realize that, quote, Colombian President Gustavo Petro offered his presidential plane to repatriate migrants coming back from the U.S. on Sunday in response to stern warnings made by President Trump. In a statement translated from Spanish, the Colombian government said the plane will help facilitate a dignified return. The government of Colombia, under the direction of President Gustavo Petro, has arranged the presidential plane to facilitate the dignified return of the compatriots who are going to arrive in this country this morning, coming from deportation flights, the translated statement read. By the way, I think if I were a migrant, I'd rather be on the C-17 than on a Colombian president's plane. Just from a pure safety perspective. But that is quite a turnaround. I mean, instead of blocking these flights, the Colombian government is going to facilitate them, using the presidential plane, no less. It was hard to see this development as anything other than a complete and total victory for the Trump administration, which explains why shortly afterwards, Trump posted this image on social media. And for our podcast listeners, it's an AI-generated image of Trump dressed like a gangster with a sign that reads FAFO, or F around and find out, which is kind of the lesson here. And apparently in response to that post, a couple hours later, the president of Colombia posted an unhinged message on X, which led to a lot of speculation that he was undergoing some kind of mental or drug-related breakdown, having been thoroughly humiliated in front of the whole world in just a few hours. Petro's long and rambling message was written in Spanish, so I'm relying on X's built-in translation tool to understand what he said, so this might be a rough translation, but with that in mind, here's part of it. Quote, this is Gustavo Petro. Quote, I like going to the black neighborhoods of Washington, where I saw an entire fight in the U.S. Capitol between blacks and Latinos with barricades, which seemed like nonsense to me because they should join together. I don't like your oil, Trump. You're going to wipe out the human species because of greed. Maybe one day over a glass of whiskey, which I accept despite my gastritis, we can talk frankly about this, but it's difficult because you consider me an inferior race, and I'm not, nor is any Colombian. Close quote. Now, if you put aside the fact that he's probably losing his mind, there's something kind of amusing about a post like this. He's trying to project a tough and defiant image after he's already backed down and agreed to fly these aliens back home on his presidential plane. It's a bit like you're the basketball team of New Zealand or something, and you're talking trash after you've already gotten blown out by Team USA by 90 points. In any event, late in the evening yesterday, the whole situation fell apart for Colombia even more. They quit pretending to be in charge. They capitulated entirely, apparently realizing how weak their negotiating position was. According to Trump's press secretary, Colombia agreed to unrestricted acceptance of all illegal aliens using military flights. Trump said that he'd hold off on the tariffs and lift the visa sanctions once the first plane load of illegal aliens lands in Colombia. So this was a total and complete victory. And Trump's message ended with this, quote, today's events make clear to the world that America is respected again. So in other words, apparently, when you're the most powerful country in the world, you can just simply force other countries to do what you want. You can actually wield power for the sake of protecting the interests of your own people. You don't have to capitulate to countries whose very existence depends on the aid and protection that you give them. They have to capitulate to you. If you force them to, and you should, you can and should use the power that you have. There's no point in being the most powerful nation on earth if you will not act like it. That is the moral of this story. You know, it's hard to overstate the importance of Trump's foreign policy victory here. He just sent a very clear signal to every other country that for the first time in a very long time, the United States is actually going to advance its own interests. using force if necessary. That's an important message to send to the government of Haiti, for example, which is especially upset right now. Quoting from the AP, the president of Haiti's Transitional Presidential Council said the Trump administration's decisions to freeze aid programs, deport migrants, and block refugees will be catastrophic for Haiti. And he goes on to say that Haiti can't handle the influx of its own people. So in other words, Haiti wants you to know that sending more Haitians to Haiti will be a catastrophe for Haiti. Right. Yeah, I mean, that's exactly the point. That's why Donald Trump was elected. It's why Tom Homan is on the streets right now with Dr. Phil kicking foreign nationals from places like Haiti and Colombia out of the country. If you don't want these people, then why exactly should we want them? If the addition of thousands of more Haitians will be a catastrophe for Haiti, then why in the hell should we take them? Haitians should be Haiti's problem, not ours. Why should our country have to deal with your country's problems? Why? Over in Honduras, they have no answer to that question, but they do seem to think that they have some leverage. They're reportedly threatening to cut off U.S. access to an airbase in their country. But again, just like Colombia, Honduras doesn't actually have any leverage in this situation. We send Honduras hundreds of millions of dollars in financial assistance every year. And if we turn that off permanently, they'll open the airbase immediately. I mean, it's Honduras. Like what? You're Honduras. What the hell do you think you can do? Honduras? No, and if you won't open the airbase, we'll just take it. How are you going to stop us? The Texas National Guard is bigger than their whole army. So what are they going to do about it? I mean, in all seriousness, if we just went in and said, yeah, we're going to take that airbase and that over there, we're going to take that too. We're going to take all that. What would they do? Invade the country? Launch an attack? They literally can't do anything. All they can do is just complain. Which, fine, go ahead and complain. Now, just think about this dynamic for a moment. All of the countries complaining about our deportation policies, all of them depend on us for financial aid. Okay, so these countries leech off of us. They take food out of our children's mouths. They steal money from our paychecks. And then they thank us for our donations by shipping the worst elements of their societies into our neighborhoods so that our fellow citizens end up lying dead in ditches because of them. And now they have the audacity to complain because we're returning the package back to sender. That's why, again, I hope Trump treats them all like he did Colombia. Tell them to shut their ungrateful mouths or he will shut it for them. For decades, we have had to put up with these entitled international welfare queens. Okay, they don't fear us, but they should. When you're the most powerful nation on the planet, lesser countries should fear you. They don't have to like you. That's not what makes peace and stability across the globe. It's not countries liking each other. That doesn't exist. It's when they fear you, when they're afraid of you, which they should be. Now, these are all obvious observations, but until Donald Trump's election, nobody in Washington ever made them. Our political leaders and expert class in this country have pretended for so long that all of our problems are hopelessly complicated. There's really nothing we can do to solve any of them. All we can do is sit around pontificating and debating and coming up with abstract theories to explain why we're so screwed. Well, Trump is proving that you can actually take action and do simple yet effective things to solve serious yet simple problems. You can, in fact, just do stuff. You can send illegal aliens back home, and when their home country doesn't want to take them, you can force them. And that's maybe the single most prominent lesson from Donald Trump's first week in office. We've already accomplished more on the international stage than we did in 4 years under the Biden administration. For Americans, this is a rare and welcome sign that we're finally getting what we voted for. And for everybody else, especially in places like Haiti and Colombia, but also all over the world, it's a clear signal that they need to respect American sovereignty. And if they don't, then they too will be as humiliated as the president of Colombia is right now. They will face crushing embarrassment or worse on the international stage. And the United States, without apologizing to anyone, will celebrate their defeat. Hey, YouTube, thanks for listening to the show. If you'd like access to my full show with no ads, you should go to dailywire.com and use promo code Walsh to get 2 months free on all annual plans. See you there.